it's for the real stories behind visionary leaders who turn the everyday into something extraordinary. I'm Jess, your host, co founder of Alchemy, and a commercial director at Lake Task Consultancy and Training. I'm a lifelong lover of stories and endlessly curious about the spark that drives people to succeed. Today, I'm really thrilled to welcome Jyotendra to share how he is creating his own alchemy in business and life. Welcome!
Thank you, Jess. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you. I really appreciate the time. I know you're a super busy guy. It would be great to hear a little bit of background about you and your business, Omind.
Sure. So I am co-founder of Omind Technologies. It's a generative AI company, which is particularly focused within the custom experience side. It's about 60 employees at the moment. We're spread between US, UK, India, and I have a couple of guys based out of Philippines as well. So doing extremely well, super busy for the last 12 months. We are looking to grow by about 150% this financial year. So really
Wow.
looking forward to it.
Ambitious. I love this.
Very,
This is a
very
great
ambitious.
start.
Thank you.
Great start. Now, behind every great business, every ambitious business is a founder with a story about how they got where they are. So tell me a little bit about your background growing up, where you grew up, and what life was like.
Wow. One of my favorite questions, I must admit, because it gets me to go back to where my roots are and really also make people aware about the place that I grew up in. It's in the northeast of India. It's a place called Manipur. It borders the country of Myanmar, or you know Burma earlier. That's what the name was. Some very pleasant and some very unpleasant memories, and a lot of adventures. That's how I would like to summarize. Now let me paint the picture. Imagine temperatures ranging from 4 degrees to 30 degrees during summer, lush green paddy fields, fresh lakes, beautiful rivers, surrounded by hills, not mountains, but hills, which you can climb in a day and come back, right? It's really lovely to be there. It gives you more like the Southeast Asia vibes, although it's pretty much in India as part of India. So growing up in Manipur during those years was a blend of vibrant community and quiet challenges as well. A lot of challenges. The valley is always buzzed with markets, which were run by women mostly, and there were lovely festivals like Cherauba with good food and music. But the backdrop wasn't always calm. There was a lot of political unrest and economic struggles. There weren't too many jobs. There were only just the government jobs, and outside the government jobs, there were just like teachers or teaching jobs. That's what was there. So power outages were constant. Many times had to study under the lantern or the candle. um, I remember our house was the only one with drinking water. So the entire community, about 50 houses, would come every morning, and there was a certain window. It wasn't available 24 by 7. So everybody would queue up just to draw water from the water that was being supplied. So that
Wow.
really kind of set the scene for me. I saw real life problems. I mean, that made me think also things like a value that really close to my heart is thinking beyond profits. There's a world outside there which is beyond profits as well. So that really set something in me, I think, which made me feel like, okay, I should really be an entrepreneur, be successful, and do something about real life problems. Now while the ethnic diversity was a blessing, but I think it's a curse at the same time, because if you go back, the ethnic problems has been really there for a very very long time. And the proximity of the state to the Golden Triangle fueled a drug crisis, because in my youth, heroin was flowing through the state. So
Wow.
hooking up many and shared needles kind of caused a lot of HIV problems. So I lost quite a few family members to both the problems. So it was a stark lesson in how borders and poverty amplify addiction, shaping my resolve to become a successful entrepreneur and be able to solve real life problems. And I think that's where it all began during this childhood.
Wow, that is a story. So it sounds beautiful, like really picturesque, but then behind that is a lot
Yeah.
of challenges, and you saw some things, I guess, that
Yeah.
fueled it. At that time, were you thinking, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, or were you thinking, I need to be successful so I can remove myself from this and have more options? Like, what was the, like, did you have the entrepreneur language at the time? What was the thinking?
Well, not exactly the terminology as an entrepreneur, but I think back in the days, a businessman was more like it, right? When we were growing up, I mean, everybody thought, okay, you do business, and that's what. So we used to call it a businessman. So I wouldn't say I was thinking in the literal word entrepreneur, but businessman is what I thought myself to be, right? And funny enough, I never imagined myself to be um, going into any other profession. I thought, okay, I need to do some sort of a business. And that got seeded right in my early days of childhood. And ever since, I've been really pursuing and really pivoting, um, you know, across my career and seeing, okay, how can I really um, get going and become a successful businessman? And challenges, of course, has been many because as I said, even though the thought was there, right there, there was no ecosystem for anybody to pick up business. There was no access to finance. There was no banks back then, so it was very difficult to imagine how one would start. There was a lack of mentorship. There was no community for anybody to start anything. And most of
Mm.
my uncles and aunts who ever started something, even a small business, failed miserably because the government had not created an ecosystem there. And I think that's really where it began. And I never imagined I would be here in UK. I would migrate to UK, but I'm thankful to God. But I did think that I will turn into some sort of a businessman doing multiple businesses. And I think I just am getting started here. Thank you.
Getting started. Wow, it sounds like you've, more than got started. What was the first spark then of, what was the first business? What was the first venture, when you were living there?
Well, this was my early 20s. After I graduated, um, as I said, the backdrop was there were no opportunities, right? I mean, there were no government jobs coming out or anything one could possibly think in the private sector as well. So I thought, okay, what should I do? So restaurant business was something that came to my mind, and I saw, okay, a lot of youngsters need a place to just maybe sip a cup of tea or coffee and have some good food. So I thought of it more like you know f- people early 20s, teenagers coming, having some food and spending some time there. So I created this restaurant. It had around 32 covers. 32 people could sit. And created a bit of a place to sit outside and curated a menu which was fast moving at the same time, not too much, so that it doesn't stress me out.
Yeah.
um, I had a couple of people. One was a cook, and then a couple of guys to help, and we started off. So that was the first thing. I mean, I remember I borrowed like I think it was like 450 pounds from my mom, and that's where I started from. Yeah, yeah, it was a
Mm.
restaurant. Yeah.
Wow, and what was the next step from there? Or what challenges did you find within that? Because 'Cause you're not in that industry now.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming you didn't either fall in love with it or there was some, "Yeah, that's not for me." Thought.
Well, actually, to tell you the truth, Jess, it was extremely successful, right? So it was like 12 months down the line after borrowing this money from mom and setting it up, and I was really able to do well. Early 20s, so the business was really doing well. Now, couple of things that I did was I was thinking one day, and I said, okay, I cannot increase the space that I have, right? But how do I increase my revenue? So very interesting. I thought, there is this largest school. Mom used to teach there, so I had connects there. So I said, okay, why don't I go and meet the headmaster over there and propose something? So I went there early, young age, and sat there, and this priest was like probably maybe in his early 50s, and he looks at me, and is thinking, what is he gonna say? So I said, okay, mom had requested a meeting, so I said, okay, I want to supply fresh food to the children, right, every day, in your in your cafeteria. And he looks at me, and he said, okay, what are you gonna give? So I said, okay, I'll make some dumplings, and I'll make some noodles, fresh one, and we'll bring it. And he was like, how are you gonna bring it? It's like a few kilometers. I said, I have a solution to that. I will bring it on a daily basis. He said, okay, I'm fine with it, but you got to go and talk to the canteen manager. I said, okay, fair enough. So I went there, spoke to the canteen manager, and I said, okay, look, this is what we're going to sell it for. And, this is your commission, and we would like to keep it here. It's like, okay. So, um, in fact, it was quite funny because we started making these dumplings, and we started, doing very well. We were making like thousands of dumplings every day, veg and chicken dumplings, and some fresh noodles. And I had a guy who would actually cycle in his bicycle and take the fresh food. We had to reach at a certain time. So it was like a proper operations that we had started. So that helped us, like, make our sales like 2x, 3x very quickly. And so it
Mm.
started doing very well. In 12 months down the line, I was actually about to open my second. So mentally, I was doing very well. Business was successful, and I was about to open this second restaurant in a different location. And as I mentioned, there was a lot of political problems there. So there were a lot of insurgent groups there, people who were operating as extremism. So slowly, steadily, started, extortion was rampant at that time. Okay, so things happen, when people figured out that you were making money, they wanted the money. So it became a little uncomfortable, awkward. And then finally, I was the only son, got two siblings, lost my dad at a very early age. So mom said, okay, this place is not for you. It's too violent. It's full of problems. I said, I won't ask you too much from life. I want you to shut the shop, sell it off, and then I want you to go to the city, because you are not probably made to live here in this environment.
Wow.
So I said, okay, what do I do? And again, mom sensed that, I was young at my early 20s. I was also not backing down, right? You're in a different attitude at that point in time. You
Yeah.
don't, you don't feel scared of picking up a fight as well, right? So I think she could sense that in me. So she said, okay, do this. So finally, without at that point of time, it was extremely difficult for me, to be honest, because
Mm.
how can you walk away from something where you've made it successful,
Yeah.
where you have actually got up early in the morning, and I used to walk to my restaurant because initially when I was starting out, money was tight. So I didn't have the money to be able to buy a bicycle or to be able to buy a motorcycle or something like that. So I used to
Mm.
walk to the restaurant, and I used to close in the evening, straight after 14, 16 hours. And then I used to walk back in the night, right? So
Yeah.
a lot of hard work has gone into it. So it was very difficult decision for me to really walk out of this, but then I said, okay, let's see, I sometimes have to place my trust in destiny as well. So I
Um,
said, okay, agreed to mom, sold it off. And then I did not know which city to go to in India, right? So you've got like Bangalore, Mumbai, Kolkata, Delhi, Hyderabad. These are all big cities. And I had no relatives. So a friend of mine was actually in Delhi. So I spoke to him. um, those were days when you were not checking your emails and you didn't have mobile phones. So I emailed him. He replied in a couple of days. And then he said, why don't you come to Delhi? I said, okay, fair enough. So he said, okay, on this date, call me on this number. So I said, okay, fair enough. So I called him. There used to be the STD booths, right, where you would dial. So I'm talking about like 2000 probably. Yeah.
like,
And then I called, and then he and I spoke, and he said, "Why don't you come to Delhi, and we'll see, what we can do." And I was like, "Okay, what are you doing?" So he said, I'm working for Jekis." I said, "What is Jekis?" So he said, "GE Capital, International Services." And in Delhi, they've just started outsourcing a lot of work, a lot of back office work, a lot of customer service work. So it was just beginning. The outsourcing was just beginning. And I said, okay, I can't understand, but maybe I'll give it a try. So I took a train, came to Delhi, and that's where I stayed with him, this friend of mine, and then applied for jobs. And within a week, I was able to get a job with uh, same GE, but GE was having a joint venture with State Bank of India, which is one of the largest banks in India,
Yeah.
state-owned bank, and they were coming out with credit cards. They were launching credit cards, so it was a joint venture between SBI and GE. So I got a job over there in the customer service department, and I had to start really like um, from customer service, taking calls and speaking to customers and really
That's very
supporting them.
different.
Yeah,
Yeah, very different industry.
it was crazy. I was so shocked that for 6 months I did not speak with anyone. I was like, what am I doing? Where have I got myself into? At
Yeah.
hindsight, it was for the good. But at that point in time, it was extremely difficult because my heart and my mind was in my place. I really loved
Mm.
being there in this valley in Imphal, which is the valley. I love my place. And suddenly having to let go of everything that you were, because in my mind at that point in time, I was on to something, right? I was starting my
Yeah.
business. I always wanted to business. And then having to let go of that and then run away from there and come to a city where you don't know anybody except for a couple of friends and start
Yeah.
a completely different direction. So it was extremely difficult. It took me a good 6, 7 months for me to really
Mm.
settle in there. Yeah.
Are you looking back, are you grateful to your mum for, you know, pushing you down that path? Like what would life have looked like now if you'd stayed?
Absolutely, I'm totally grateful
Mm.
because I think that set the path for where I am today. To be
Yeah.
honest, I think a lot of international exposure, being able to work with a diverse workforce, different sorts of people, being able to experience a lot of different cultures, travel the world. So I'm absolutely thankful, full of gratitude. Um,
Um,
but at that point in time, I could not understand that, right? So
yeah.
obviously,
Yeah.
I went through this difficult moment in my life, but I am very thankful for
Mm.
how life has turned out to be.
What what do you think you learnt from that experience of having to go from a place you love, doing something you love, and then thrown into this whole new environment and having to start from scratch?
I think, somewhere I would say, some may call it God, some may call it luck, some may call it being in the right place at the right time, some may call it destiny. I do not know what name to call it, but sometimes I think you just got to have the faith and trust, right? You may not know at that moment what is the right thing, but I think maybe there is an external force that does intervene at times, right? Like this case, I mean, sometimes I wonder that had I been stubborn, how would my life would have turned out to be right today? And it's difficult to imagine because it's not like things have become absolutely fine there. The challenges that I mentioned still exist. If you see for the
Mm.
last 2 years, there is a huge ethnic problem that's happening between my community and cookies, right? Which
Mm.
originally came in from Myanmar. So there are problems still. The problems still exist. The problems of the ecosystem not being there to create successful businesses and push people and the youth in the right direction. It still does not exist. It's still a
Mm.
corrupt place. It used to be very corrupt. It's still very corrupt. So I think it's not devoid of the challenges that we face. Maybe slightly some things have become better and some things have become worse. Like I
Mm.
was there a couple of years ago, and at least I know for sure that the water problem seems to have been solved, right? Every household there when I was growing up, people coming in, queuing up seems to have gone away, right? So
Mm.
so some of the problems have gone away, but I think there are more complicated problems out there. So I cannot fathom, how it would have been. But I am glad that it turned out to be that way, and I'm also glad that I actually heard, to what was being said or advised. So I think advice from maybe elders, maybe from people that know better in life, I think is extremely crucial to listen. Even in business, I think, there are this whole concept of mentorship, somebody
Yeah,
who has walked that path, right? Somebody who's built a successful business, successful entrepreneur, probably who's raised successfully or exited successfully. I think there are valuable lessons in it. And I
yeah,
think that advice is very, very precious. So that's one thing that I would say I really learned from it, that, okay, you should stop and not always think that you know the best, but sometimes listen
yeah.
to somebody else who might be much more better and much more experienced in that particular space.
Yeah, who you surround yourself with matters, doesn't it? And surrounding
Absolutely.
yourself with people who, yeah, like you said, have walked the path or seen things that you haven't seen and could give a fresh perspective as well, not just the
Right.
people really close to you who see the ins and outs. Yeah, 100% agree. So from dumplings to generative AI,
Yeah, it's quite a journey.
how does that, I mean, I feel like that should be a tagline now, you know?
Yeah,
How how
absolutely.
does that happen? So you're in customer service now, you've got the
Yeah,
headphones on,
yeah,
learning a completely new industry.
yeah.
What happens between that period and, the birth of your business? Like what's going on here?
Yeah, no, it sounds, and sometimes I find it funny too, right? I mean, when I think of my own journey. So, but you know what? I think it has given me a unique advantage. I feel that way, right? Because if you look at somebody who is only a good programmer, probably they don't understand the business context. And if you look at the business people, they do not understand the technology part, right? But life has brought me in such a way where I think I can stitch between the two. And it's given me a very unique understanding and a unique positioning for myself. Okay, I'll
Um,
explain that and elaborate that. So, I started off on the business side. So that helped me understand, okay, there were like, screens, it was mainframe, where you wrote a command to see screens. So I think I had to learn around 80 to 85 different screens, where you would go and look up the statement balance because these are all legacy platforms for the banking, right? So it helped me understand the banking processes, how cards are issued, how underwriting is done. And because be able to service a customer who has the credit card and is using, you gotta really know everything that's happening, right? Because sometimes there
mm,
could be a block. You need to be able to remove the block and so on and so forth. So that helped me really understand the business process side. Okay, customer service is very important for any industry, any kind of business. And before customer service, you also have the customer acquisition piece, right? Where somebody's inquiring and making whether they should buy that product or apply for the credit card. So you need to know the products as well. So that helped me understand business process within, let's say, a credit card industry. And from there on, I moved into a role of an analyst with American Express, and that made me understand a lot more better about how credit cards and financial services operate, right? So slowly over a period of time, I had a bit of a background in programming. I'd done some programming courses, and during the 3 years of degree, some level of programming. But don't ask me to code because I'm not really, really, I'm out of it completely, right?
you can't be
So,
good at everything. You
yeah,
can't be good.
exactly. So, so over a period of time, so the business process, the application started knowing it. And then slowly, steadily, I started working for technology and IT enabled services, where you're running call centers to back office, and then you're also developing softwares. So I was working for an IT technology after American Express, and I was running, a large setup of a lot of business processes that were running for across customers from Australia, from US, and from UK as well. And that helped me really understand business process. Okay, and then I think I was a curious soul, and that really helped me. I wanted to create things. I wanted to be able to build things. So when I saw a problem in running massive headcounts, early on, with a couple of real good programmers in the office, we said, okay, why can't we do this? Why can't I have this real time reporting? Why can't why can't? So I started asking these questions, and slowly, steadily, we started building things that would help us in our day to day operation. And that's really where I think the interest in technology came in, okay, in this career. Then, with this company, one day, my boss called me and says, okay, we feel like I want to transfer you to London, just like that, right? I was in Delhi, and I had been to London for a meeting, meeting customers. I'd been to US, I'd been to Australia. And some reason I found UK weather, London quite similar to home, right? And I was like, I wouldn't mind living here, right? Never thought that I would actually land up here. So out of the blue, my boss says, okay, we're thinking of transferring you. So from managing operations for the company, I want you to move into a more commercial role, which is client relationship and sales. And I said, I've never done it. He said, no, okay, there's always a first time. So,
Mhm.
so
You're
I
used to
said,
that by now, though, right? Like,
exactly, but I just
what's the
get
next
thrown
bit?
into it, right? So I said, okay. So he says, are you not going to talk to your wife? I said, no, I'm sure she's going to be happy about it. And at first she was not, right?
I
I
was
thought
gonna
she would
say,
be. And that is, I still regret it. It's 18 years that we've got married. And that's one point. She's like, you didn't even ask. So
like, I'm with her. I'm with
yeah. So I mean, I thought I was taking a decision in our interest and for the future, right?
Mm.
So we came here, landed up in January of 2010. Yeah, it was the day I came here. It was like as soon as I reached the hotel, I was supposed to come for my induction and everything, and it started snowing. So it was beautiful, a real good experience. Long 9 hours, 10 hours flight from Delhi, then come here, land here, and you're just like, you know experiencing snow falling for the first time in your life. So
Wow.
nothing short of a beautiful spectacle, right? It was an
Yeah.
amazing experience, yeah. So I really loved it. And then slowly, took over. My induction completed, went back, and then finally March, I think 22nd, if I remember, is when I came back finally with the work permit and everything processed. So that's when we landed. So worked with NIT. I was managing the customers, managing business, trying to crack deals. I think there's always a beginner's luck, like the way. So within 6 months, out of the blue, in the new role, in a new country, trying to settle, I landed a multi-million-dollar deal.
Right, I'm just gonna stop you there. I love what you said about beginner's luck, and I was like, but I feel like luck's got nothing to do with it. I feel like you just go head first and just try your best and see what comes out of it. So I think it's probably a bit of tenacity rather than the luck.
I still am to figure that out because I still don't have an answer, because sometimes I feel there is a strong, you know hand somewhere, something that
Yes.
happens and it just puts you probably in the right location. And I mean, sometimes, because I've also seen the other days, right? I mean, on one hand, things happen, and on the other hand, you work like 60 hours and you've put in
Yeah.
all the effort, and then it's not working, and you just can't understand and fathom, what exactly is going wrong, right? And I've been in those situations as well, when you're pursuing a larger contract or a larger deal, and you can sometimes it's difficult. You've done the right things, you put the best people, you put all the stuff that you can put in a good proposal, but
Yeah.
still it's very difficult to figure out what went wrong. And that's why, sometimes I have not let that get into my head that, okay, it's all because of my effort or hard work, because sometimes I actually honestly believe that sometimes it's not so. It's sometimes it just works, like magic, and it's probably meant to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a beautiful way of thinking about it, so I'm not gonna say you're wrong because that's lovely. Yeah.
Thank
Wow.
thank you. Yeah, so that's where I landed. And then it's been quite amazing thereafter. So coming to the technology, so of course, when you go into customers and when you manage, then you see business problems. Then you see that, okay, technology can solve. So you take help, you work with, you collaborate, and you try and do solutions that can really benefit the customers and add value and have an impact, right? And that's been a conscious effort. One thing that I've learned is to be honest with customers. That if I can do something, if I can solve something, if I cannot, then I cannot, right? And
Mm.
I think that's really helped me. That's really helped me in working with customers, in building relationships. And then I think heavy work in technology came between 2012 to 2018. Um, by this time, I had joined a company called, Interglobe Technologies, which was again an IT plus a business process company specializing only within the travel sector at that point in time. Now they may have diversified, but at that point in time, it was solely focused in travel. And I was heading the region, then started building. So I started getting into the sales leadership, commercial leadership role, right, from an individual contributor back in that role with an IT. So that gave me a lot of exposure. I was able to travel. I was looking after UK, Europe, and America as a market. Successfully built a good amount of revenue for them in those 6 7 years, taking the market size to you know a good size. Um, and then worked with top travel companies providing technology services, providing business process services. So a lot
Hmm.
of, let's say, the Fortune 500 companies, which is within the travel space, from airlines to online travel companies, started doing a lot of them. Very complex projects as well. We did a large transformation project from legacy into OpenStack on the technology side. Now, while doing this, what I did was, there were many times where I could not understand. So I actually was curious, so I would actually sit down with a technical guy like an architect and say, "Hey, listen, explain this to me." Okay. Or I would grab my customer who's very good in it, and I would say, "Hey, I don't have a clue of what we are talking here. Can you sit down and explain to me?" I remember one such occasion where we were talking of an airline reservation systems, and it was a complex area because it was related with weight and balance, for the plane to take off. And I could not understand a thing in the meeting. So I went up to this customer, and I said, "Hey, can you sit down with me for an hour? Just help me understand, the basics, right?" So I
Hmm.
made that effort, and that kind of helped me understand business applications and the technology quite well. Um, and that gave me a good view into this. So I was able to get a sense of, okay, where it's going, from digital transformation. Okay, where is the AI sitting in this? So it helped me really understand that part. And that's how I got into this space, because I thought this is the wave. I see this as, let's say, let's say back in the days, you had horse as a mode of transportation. And then if you told that generation that someday you will see drones and driverless cars and, some of the things, they like if you told them the kind of cars that are coming out now, I think it would be hard to imagine. So similarly, I see that, you know, we are there is a wave, and this is a good wave in that sense. And I see that this is probably a good chance for the next couple of years to really get into it and to really lead in this space. So that's the opportunity I see.
I love what you've said about, you mentioned it previously about the curiosity being a bit of a superpower. And I think that's like been a thread all the way through, hasn't it? You've gone,
Yeah.
I don't understand that. I need to find out more. I don't understand what the problem is there. I'm going to dig
Yeah.
in and find out more. And curiosity, I feel, is an underrated trait to have as a business person or anyone really living life. Find out, ask more questions. And the great businesses are born from problems, isn't it? That
Yeah.
people have seen and explored. So it's really fascinating to see that thread running through your story. Um, let's talk about Omind then. So what is it? What problem do you solve? And where are you at currently with that stage of the business?
Absolutely. Thank you. I mean, um, I'll try and explain as simple as I can, because sometimes it can get a feeling that, okay, we're trying to do too much. So let me first explain which segment of customer experience are we talking about, right? So every organization, every industry vertical requires, as I mentioned, on the customer acquisition. And after they have acquired a customer, they need customer service, customer support, right? Now, if you look at this space, this is the space that I'm talking about, because this is the space where I see there's a huge potential for us to do work with AI and agentic AI and the LLMs that is coming out every day, almost every day, right? So Omind operates in this space, very conscious boundary that we want to operate, because we understand this extremely well. Not just me, but also the parent company that has funded Omind, as I mentioned. It is been there for 20 years, operating in this space. So they operate contact centers and call centers across 40 locations and globally with 20,000 people. So this is a
Hmm.
space that we all understand very, very well, right? We understand the business process side, and then technology is what we want to use to improve those operational processes, bring efficiencies, increase productivity, reduce cost, or increase revenue for our customers, have that impact, deliver on those business outcomes. And it's quite easy to deliver on those business outcomes, right? So this is the space. So we ring fenced it that, okay, we will operate, not everything, we can't do everything. So we will operate in this space because we know this space extremely well.
Sensible.
Yeah.
Start where you're an expert. Yeah.
Exactly. And then we said, okay, hmm, how do we make lives easier, right? What can we create where either a call center agent taking a call, his or her life is easier, or a customer's life is easier, right?
Mhm.
And that's where the thinking came in from. Okay. Um, the inception was when the company itself grew to around 8 to 10,000 people, and we required tools and technologies to be able to manage that kind of a diverse workforce across different locations. So
Mm.
we needed something known as the employee lifecycle management, and that was the first software that we developed. All right, and that's how it was born. And over a period of time, we saw, okay, how do we continuously now bring in more products that can really enhance and that can make things much much better. So one of the tools that we have is very interesting. So let's say you and I are talking. We can take the call recording, drop it into our AI tool, and the AI, this, let's say, 2 hour call, the AI can just go through it in a few, let's say, 30 seconds or within a minute, and really give us a concise of what has happened and even rate it. Okay.
Okay.
So now, why is this important in this particular context? As I mentioned, that we understand this space very well. Now, when you're running large contact centers, and when I say large contact centers, like for example, let's take any of the banks or any of the travel companies, they all have a lot of headcount doing customer service because there are millions of calls coming in, there are a
Mm.
lot of emails coming in, there's a lot of chat that's happening, and today it's become even more complex. So in this space, you have the complexity of volumes, and then you have the complexity of multilingual because not everybody speaks English,
Yeah.
right? So that's why it's a complex area. Now, imagine if you're receiving, 15 calls in Norwegian, you still need a couple of people to be able to answer, even if the volume is low. So there is a lot of things that's happening in that space, right? So therefore, the application of genetic AI, agentic AI, sorry, the generative AI is absolutely important here, and we see a huge fitment there. That this is where you could. So this tool actually is implemented in about 64 projects at the moment after we launched. So it's been an
Wow.
immensely successful tool. So you can monitor anything from 1% to 100% of interactions that's happening, whether it's on email or on phone. Now, why this is important is because if you were to do this manually, you can only monitor like 1 or 2% of the sample. So that means, let's say, if you're receiving 1,000 calls today, you could barely listen to 1 or 2% humanly. But with
Yeah.
the AI coming in, you can deal with it. You can crunch the information. You can listen to, okay, what your customers are saying, take the voice of the customer and really make good improvements that can impact your customer experience, right? So this is one of the tools. The other product is called Arya. As you know, my name is Jyotendra Thokshom, very complicated, difficult to pronounce. So I was inspired by Aryabhatta, who gave a concept of zero to the world. But Aryabhatta is a bit of a tongue twister for the Western world. So I thought, okay, I want to keep it a simple name so that it's easy. So I said, okay, we'll keep it as Arya. So Arya, what I thought is that if I can put this engine in a real time call when somebody is assisting a customer, and Arya is able to become like a assistant, a co-pilot to the customer service agent because there are tons of information, right? Like, for example, let's say you're in a bank. Now, the amount of information that you need to know from all sorts of products to all sorts
Mm.
of things that needs to happen, it's too much sometimes for the customer support agent, right? So it's an assist. It also listens in at the back end and grades your call or grades how you're doing. It also coaches you continuously because when you put this in a human to human scenario, you could have one supervisor is to 20 customer service agents, right? So it's not a
Mm.
1:1 ratio, but if you have the AI and it's robust, continuous improvement can be brought into a 1:1 ratio because the AI can operate at a 1:1 level, right? So those were some of the benefits that we saw, and therefore we came up with Arya. That's the other tool. And the third tool is voice bot, where you can have a conversational human like conversation, which can take out calls which are, let's say, situations like, for example, your call center is busy, just an example, right? And but there are still sometimes demand, right? And
Mm.
people are calling in. You don't have people to take care of those. You could divert this into the voice bot, and they could take care. Or during the night, you could divert it into the voice bot. It talks like a human. It's well trained, so it can take and handle at least a certain amount of calls that are
Wow.
coming in a decent way. Yeah, and if you integrate it fully, then it's able to process a lot of transactions as well. So that's
Wow.
the other one that we have come up with.
This is fascinating. And I know that there will be, hopefully people are listening, but there will be questions around, does this mean that there is potential for this to um take people's jobs? Will we need call center operatives? I think you've mentioned a few times you still need people, and I'm of the mind that AI is a tool to improve people's jobs and efficiency. So
Mhm.
that would be the way that I would think. But the way you've described it, it seems like there would be potential almost for AI to do that job. Is that how you see it, or is there no risk there for that?
I see. It's hard to predict, to be honest. Very, first of all, I must really acknowledge that because when I say hard to predict, it's because it's difficult to imagine. It's difficult to sit here and imagine, how it's gonna be looking like, right? Just like
Mm.
somebody who was using the horses and carriages, and then if you were to tell them, driverless cars, it would be very hard for that person to really
Yeah.
imagine
Yeah,
that
100%.
today, right? So it's very
Yeah.
difficult today, right now, to imagine this. However, I do not believe that it's gonna replace humans, right? I believe it's gonna be a co-creator because
Yeah.
if you look at the application today, right, most of the technology and most of the Gen AI and agentic AI that's coming is more of a co-creator. It's more of a co-pilot, right?
Mm.
It's not really replacing. And then, of course, there will always be exceptions. There will always be, and that has to be handled. What it does is basically it is able to really help you when it comes to volumes and complexities where a human is unable to handle. So let's say if you are HR, okay, and you have just received today 5,000 CVs. Now,
Yeah.
if you were to read that manually and shortlist,
Yeah.
it's probably gonna take a long time, right? And then add to it the pressure to be able to really sieve through it because the candidates are not waiting for you to call back because they will find another job if they don't get it, right? So you
Mm.
are in this pressure cooker scenario, right, where you have different things to happen. So that is where I see the use coming in strongly because the AI then can parse the resumes in a very, very quick fashion and then
Yeah.
help make a decision that, okay, these are 1,000, which looks good, basis the job description that you have given, right? And that is where it's extremely useful. So I don't
Yeah.
think it replaces that human element, but what it does is complements the human to become far more productive, far more
Yeah.
efficient. And that's where I think the use is going to be.
Yeah, I agree. There's the explanation, I can't remember who said it, but AI is not gonna take over jobs. It's gonna take over the jobs of the people who aren't using AI or something to that effect. So the people who are not adopting it, um, are going to be left behind almost, I suppose. And that I guess that applies to businesses as well. Have you met any resistance um, from, businesses when you're, pitching this idea or support?
Um, well, resistance not to the concept, not to the solutions, but I
Mm.
think people are not taking decisions as quickly as we thought they would, right? That people would
Right.
jump and enterprises would be, oh, wow, lo and behold, this is it. Let's just get onto it. So that's not
Yeah.
happening. People are carefully cautious, and I think rightly so, because
Yeah.
you got to evaluate everything, right? So that is definitely happening. It's not like, every customer that we talk to is saying, hey, JT, let's sign it, here's the contract. No, I
Yeah.
think people are
That'd be
watching.
nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
That'd be
exactly. Amazing.
brilliant. Yeah, I think I mean it's an interesting topic in it, and AI is definitely a hot topic
Right.
at the moment. In terms of you've done a lot of things, you've been really curious, you've transitioned between industries, learned a lot. You seem like the type of person that's always going to be learning and asking questions, which I think is a valuable trait in any entrepreneur. But how do you personally stay focused and motivated, especially with, challenging times, situations, going into different environments and having to, uplift your life into a different city? Like how do you stay motivated to keep going?
Thank you. That's a very important question. I think it's very important, because sometimes it can really get overwhelming, like the way you said. I think I try and anchor myself as much as possible in the purpose, really being very clear of that, right? Okay, what am I trying to do? At any time, or let's say a period. I think anchoring in purpose is something that I do very often. Really try and be very clear of my purpose, right? What am I building? Why am I building? What am I doing? What is my role here? Even when I came here, new country, I was very clear. Okay, I need to be um, transitioning into this commercial role, right? And that was my purpose, and I need to be successful. So there was no question of not being successful, and that kind of motivated me to really put my heart and mind and soul into it. It also stems from the fact that, as I mentioned, growing up seeing so many different real life problems, there was this innate desire to be able to make an impact and solve those kind of problems, right? And I think that also motivates me. And when the path is murky, as I mentioned, I always go and find somebody to talk to, who with whom I can collaborate, seek advice, and that could very well be my wife. It could be my ex boss. It could be anybody who I think may have the right advice for me. Right.
Mm.
If it's financial, I try and find somebody like a chartered accountant or somebody like that who is more experienced and more
Find the
knowledgeable.
experts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And if it has been something legal, then I go, and I have a very good friend who's a lawyer, and I speak to him and I say, okay, look, this is the situation. What do you think?
Mm.
What's your suggestion, right? And I think going to the right people is always important, right? Like marketing, as I mentioned, right? I mean, going to that person who really has done it, it makes a
Mm.
lot of difference. And then
Yeah.
I carve out time for reflection, so that really helps me. I cannot operate with a cluttered mind, so it's important for me to really, for my head to be really clear. So
Mm.
that means I walk a lot. I go out for a walk, quite often. It helps me clear. And
Mm.
sometimes just spending time in quietness and a bit of meditation also is very,
Yeah.
very helpful, because I think that helps you avoid that tunnel vision. Sometimes you could get into that, um and everything is moving so fast in today's world, right? So I think that clarity is very important, and it's also important to understand a fact that you will not have clarity by just sitting here. You will have clarity as you iterate, right? As you go through the process. I mean, when you start thinking of building, entrepreneurship is not like, okay, oh, this is my idea, this is what I'm thinking, okay, it's gonna be a hit. It actually doesn't work that way. You got to be really adaptive, and I think you got to really pivot, and you got to take each day at a time, but be very clear during that time, right? And then keep your head very, very clear. So I think
Mm.
those are some of the things that has helped me stay sane.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it works for me. I'm not sure how it works for others, but it's worked for me. Like being able to practice this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I read something once around creative people, or creativity comes to people in periods of solitude and quiet, so that you've got that space for ideas to float in, move around a bit and float out again, or doing something really like manual and mundane, like, and I suppose
Yeah.
walking falls into that. People get ideas in the shower, all of
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
sort of narrative. But yeah, it's interesting point on the reflection. Because I was having a conversation with a leadership coach this morning, and she was
Yeah.
saying that, you know, she often gets to a point, you know, 2, 3 months down the line and is always looking forward, like, "What's the next thing? What's the next thing?" And then forgetting to take a moment to reflect on all of the work and progress that's gone.
Mhm.
And I think ambitious people tend to do that, don't they? Like, what's the next thing? Where am I going next? And not reflecting enough on what's gone before. So it's good that you're taking that time to
Right.
do that and process. And like you said, it's probably helping create those ideas then, isn't it? If you're
Yeah.
taking
Yeah.
that time.
Yeah.
What I'm sure you're familiar with the BHAG. Uh, uh,
Yes, absolutely.
yes, of course
Yes.
you are. What, um I mean, you've moved, you pivoted, you've transitioned, so what is the next? And for everyone listening, it stands for big, hairy, audacious goal.
Close.
So what is your BHAG? Where are you going next?
So, with regard to Omind, right? I think as I mentioned earlier, about 150% growth is what we are looking at this year. I think that is what BHAG. It's a good number to go after. So
Yeah.
immediately for the next 12 months, I think that's probably, on the commercial side in what we are doing. On the personal side, I want to be able to take time out at least a week to week and go trekking in Nepal. So that's
Oh,
been
wow.
something on my list for a very long time, right?
Brilliant.
If I can do that over the next 12 months, then I think I'll be quite I'll consider that as achieving my BX for this year.
I love
Um,
that.
after after the after this year, it's a little unclear at this moment because
Mm,
there are various options, and as I mentioned, there are certain plans of the parent company as well. So it's slightly unclear at this point in time. But I'm pretty sure that for these 12 months, these two probably would be my BHAGs for the next 12 months.
brilliant, brilliant. I love people's BHAG stories. I'm like, "What is it? Tell me, tell me." That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Do you have a draw or a pull back to where you grew up to look at solving some of those problems you mentioned earlier? Because you've you've said about the draw and your values and things like that, and I'm wondering if there might be a future where you've discovered a way to solve some of those problems somewhere, yourself maybe, or with a new business.
Absolutely. That's always in my mind. So there are certain problems which I feel, although I want, I mean, I wish I could do something, but sometimes
Yeah.
you are so challenged that it's not something that you can solve so easily, right? It's become so complex.
Yeah.
So, so there are things that are close to my heart. Like, for example, one thing that always bothers me is like, how do you create an ecosystem so that, for the youth, you could make entrepreneurship accessible. Maybe get more involved in the startup side. Maybe create some ecosystem there. So that's a conscious effort which I keep exploring, trying to see if there is a way in. It's not easy being here, and then especially the last 2 years has not been easy because it's been extremely unstable
Mm.
politically. So that's a difficult thing right now. However, in whatever small ways, and I cannot share too much details, but I did meet some officials, and I did a POC for them using AI, which can solve a lot of things that's happening there, which is unaccounted for. Okay, and
Oh,
and because of my confidentiality, I cannot
damn it.
elaborate too much, but very interesting problems. So these are
Oh,
like real problems, but real problems that the government is facing, real challenges, and we see AI could potentially help. And we did a POC. POC was extremely successful, and we were having conversations for further, elaborating and taking the proof of concept into a full time solution. Unfortunately, the government collapsed. So we are where we are at this point in time. So we're just hoping that things stabilize. So it's a you know it's a bit of a disappointment for me personally, but
yeah.
I was so excited finally being able to do something, there.
Yeah. I'm sure you'll find a way. It sounds like you will.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. That's really I mean,
yeah,
some things are gonna be out of your control, aren't they? And you can
yeah,
only do what you can do.
yeah.
So yeah, the effort and the willing is there, but sometimes you just can't, yeah, control the time. That's been so interesting. I feel like we could talk for hours.
Same here.
I'm going to end on a question that, ties it back. The word alchemy is really important to me, right? Because I feel
Right.
like the people that I talk to who are doing amazing things are literally creating something from nothing. And I think that story is wonderful. So imagine you've got a personal alchemy formula. What's the one ingredient you can't do without and why in your recipe pot?
Wow. Wow. Well, that's a tricky one, but I
Mm.
think I think I'll stick to the question and just mention one.
You can have more
So
than one if you like. If it's more than one, that's fine.
no, I'll just stick to the question. So I think the one ingredient that I can't do without is curiosity, because it sparks that drive that everything else like innovation, resilience, and impact, right, that we spoke of.
Mm.
Because you got to ask, what's possible, what's broken, how can we do better, and what impact does this have? Whatever I'm doing, is this really innovation, or am I just not innovating and just trying to make a quick buck here? So I think I think these questions only comes in once you are curious and you want to really find this out.
Mm.
And I would say that is very, very important. I feel, because without that I would have probably not been able to ask the right questions and go down a path that is much more clearer. So I think curiosity definitely should be that ingredient.
I love that. That is a great answer. Great answer. And I think that would be in my recipe pot too. Definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely. Thank you so much for your time. I feel like we probably need to bring you back in a year or so to see if you've managed to, get more detail on that project that you were talking about, and seeing where you're at, seeing what country you're in for a start, what
absolutely.
industry you're in. I think that would be
Yeah,
brilliant. But I really,
sure.
really appreciate your time. It was really fascinating.
Absolutely, Jess. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much. And I would love to be back. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks.
Bye.